All right, everybody. I normally don't stream under circumstances like this. And this is more so because it's easier to do streams than it is to do pre-recorded videos, editing them and throwing them out there. You know me, I'd like to just have my notes, have my slides, whatever, go off the cuff here. This is one of those cases where I have my notes together here. I have a bunch of them. There's more than just what's on here. In regards to why Nikishin was scratched last night, or why I believe it. This is just purely speculation on my part. I have no sources. I have nothing to back this up other than past experience of watching how this team operates and things of that nature. Now, if you are new here, I'm going to brag about myself, I guess you could call it, a little bit. When it comes to criticism or praise of Rod Brindamore, you will not find many people who have the record on it I do. When it comes to praise or criticism of Rod Brindamore, it's a two-party system that makes Republicans and Democrats look like normal. There is one half of the spectrum that thinks that he can do no wrong, that no decision he ever makes is wrong, and that every single shortcoming the team has is 110% on the front office, the players, the kid working at the snack bar, everybody but Rod. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people who have wanted him fired for 5 seasons. And that crowd intensified despite winning last night. Here's where I fall into that. I am in the middle, but I still lean very, very hard pro Rod Brindamore. There was one post I made one time last year that got totally taken completely out of context regarding what I thought of his coaching. It was actually overwhelmingly positive what I was saying about him. I was just helping people understand, 300 wins, 7 straight seasons in the playoffs it ultimately became. It will be 8. But it is only a matter of time before that window closes, and it closes for good. Your core is aged, and all your best players are old, and of course the Canes stack people through the draft and everything, and they'll be good for a long time. But before you know it, good times go by fast. Before you know it, it could all be over, and the Canes don't have the hardware. That's all I was saying with that. Yet a lot of people took what I said out of context. I don't think they did it on purpose, and they drug my name through the mud without even using my name. On the inverse of that, there are a lot of people who will defend Rod when he's not even being criticized, as I saw that day. And then there are other people that took what I said and used it as evidence for their own personal anti-Rod rhetoric. So let me make something abundantly clear. I think 90%, probably more, we'll say 95% of the decisions Rod Brindamore makes are correct. The 5% he makes that aren't good tend to happen at inopportune times. The decision last night to scratch Nikishin was not one of those catastrophically bad ones. I also think, personally, that there is more to it than what we may ever know. Now, here's one thing we have to consider with the direction that the league is going in. Leo Carlson for the Anaheim Ducks a couple of seasons, I want to say it was last season, was just kind of randomly scratched out of nowhere. And the Ducks came out and said that was part of a load management conditioning plan for him. And I think that was the first domino in the modern era really using load management conditioning plans for their top players when circumstances permitted it. Last night was not exactly a must-win game. You already have 3 points. You came out of that game with 5 anyway on a 4-game road trip. It's already successful regardless of what happens in Buffalo. Would you like to come home with 7 points out of a possible 8? Absolutely. But winning against a Western Conference team on a road trip that you already have 3 of the 5 points you need to really call it a net positive, that's fine. And if you want to have Nikishin's availability, it'd be better to have it against a team in the Eastern Conference, even though they're in the Atlantic Division and not the Metropolitan. It's still a 4-point swing in the overall standings of the Eastern Conference. It's November, as Lackey is pointing out. I'll get to your comments in a minute there, buddy. It's November. If you're going to do something like this, if you're going to have a load management scratch or a performance-related scratch or a injury so minor that you don't call it an injury scratch, or maybe the flu bug's going around. There's a bunch of different reasons why that could have happened last night. Nikishin has looked a little off compared to what he was doing 3 games ago. The last 3 games, he's looked a little off. So that doesn't surprise me at all. Maybe he's dealing with a little bit of something. If you've ever tried to skate with shin splints, I'd rather try to skate with a broken foot. I'll just be perfectly honest with you. Maybe it could have been something that damn simple. So, this is not one of those times where I think that the Fire Rod crowd should try to wave the victory or wave the flag and, take a victory lap over something like this. I know Riley had that one turnover that scored, but ultimately the team got it together and won. Carolina played a very well executed game last night. Let's wait and see if ever we hear an explanation as to why Nikishin was scratched. Here's what I personally believe. I think it's a load management thing. And I would rather him do that now than later in the season. If you've looked at Carolina's schedule, and I've gone over it on here in an individual stream, March and April are going to be hard for the Canes. It's good for them to stack points now, but March and April, there's a ton of 4-point swings. The travel is an absolute nightmare. Personally, I don't think that this is anything to panic about, get mad about, or get concerned about. On the inverse of that, if this continues, then different discussion to be had. But I don't think that this is that big of a deal. So, all that is to say, it's November. This kid is going to put up a lot of minutes and a lot of games for the Hurricanes. This is not going to have anything to do with him not signing. He'll sign. I'm very confident of that. I know a lot of people are having playoff flashbacks to when Nikishin was scratched twice in favor of noted traffic cone Scott Morrow. I understand. I was madder than hell, and I've never been more mad at Rod than I was in game 1, and then I was infuriated by game 2. I get that. Last night was not the playoffs. It was not one of those situations where you have to win a game. You're not worried about going down in a 7-game series. It was not one of those times where you needed to put the absolute best team possible on the ice. That's not going to decide if they're above or below the cut line come April. It's not game 1 of an Eastern Conference Final Series. It's not game 2 of an Eastern Conference Final Series. Whatever minutes Nikishin didn't play last night, because everyone who plays a sport for a living or does anything for a living, you have a shelf life. Everybody does. The 18 to 20 minutes he didn't play last night is 18 to 20 minutes he might play later in his career or even later this season. So this is not a big thing to get worried about. 1 second. So the other thing we have to remember here, we have no idea when Jacob Slavin's coming back. Mike Riley has already played a little bit more than you would imagine, but I also believe that they had the knowledge that Slavin was going to be dealing with something with the knee this season, and that's why they went out and got a really good 7th defenseman like Mike Riley, who could be a mainstay NHL player on a team that's not so deep on the blue line to help mitigate however much time that Slavin is out, that you have somebody in there who can step up and play that role for a little while. So that's the other thing to consider with it. That might be Riley's last chance to play for a while because they're trying their best and they're taking their time with Slavin. That's totally fine. That's what I want them to do. Like I said, I can care less if Jacob Slavin plays another regular season game as long as he's healthy for the playoffs. And, of course, it would be nice to see him in the Olympics too. And if Team USA doesn't have Slavin, they're not going to win straight up. But even with him, they might not win. But if they don't have him, they're definitely not going to win. There's 0% chance. So, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Canes fan. I know that Jacob Slavin is about the only person on earth who can legitimately match up with Connor McDavid, shut him down, and then next shift take Nathan McKinnon. So those are all things to be considered with that. So Nystrom's probably going back to the American League at some point. He doesn't have to clear waivers. And then when Slavin comes back, Riley's out of the lineup anyway. It was just one of those times where you have a chance to not worry about a 4-point swing, get a guy some rest, maybe point some stuff out to him in the press box if he's doing very small little nuanced things wrong that maybe we don't notice on the broadcast. I don't know how many other people go back and watch a game a second time that don't have to, like I do, just for the sake of note-taking and talking about it on streams, all that type of stuff. You will be surprised how many things you notice when you watch a hockey game the second time that you didn't notice the first time, especially when you're not watching it live and you can pause and rewind it and you go, wait, did that just really happen and everything? Because I take a lot of notes. So this was a good time to give Nikishin or anybody else in the lineup, that for that matter, a break, because come March and April, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's got to pull the rope and it's going to be hard. And if you want to go into the playoffs in a good seed, if you want to win the division or be second in the division, or, President's Trophy's on the table. And when it comes to the Canes and the President's Trophy, I'm not worried about the President's Trophy curse because it'll be a one-of-one situation with the Canes because they've never won it before. Not even in the year they won the cup. I think that it's just not anything to get upset about. Now, if this trend continues and we don't get any information as to why, then that's when some questions are going to need to be asked. So I say to both parties, the Church of Rod Brindamore and the Church of Rod Brindamore is the Antichrist. Both of you, please just calm down. This is a much more nuanced situation, whatever it is. Everyone's acting like that Nikishin's going to end up demanding a trade or not wanting to sign because of this. I disagree with that heavily. It's a game off. It's probably a load management thing. He might have had the flu. Who knows? It is not the most dire, consequential thing ever. So I'm just going to ask both you, pump the brakes. It's not that big of a deal. And again, if you're new here, when it comes to opinions on Rod Brindamore, you will not get much more nuance than me. You will either get people who apologize for everything that he does and blames everybody in the organization for any shortcomings other than him, or then you have people who blame him for 100% of everything. And neither one of those things are fair. And to be perfectly honest, both sides piss me off, but the side that pisses me off more is probably the Church of Rod Brindamore side, because when you praise somebody constantly for their merits, and Rod has many merits, far more than he has drawbacks, you kind of diminish the things that they actually do well, and it looks like you're just arbitrarily praising everything they've done. And there's a lot of people out there who praise Rod for who he is, not what he's done. You cannot praise someone for who they are, you cannot praise someone for what they have done if you don't point out the good and the bad of it. And then it becomes a point where they're just praising him for who he is. I praise Rod as required, which is most of the time, for his accomplishments and for the things he does right. And at the same time, if he does something wrong, or if I think he does something wrong, I'm going to say it. The people who defend him arbitrarily and with absolutely no nuance whatsoever to anything, they're praising him because of who he is and what he's done for the franchise. I'm praising him because of what he's done for the franchise and what he's still doing as a coach. Therefore, when he does make something I believe is a mistake, I will say so. But that doesn't take away from the overwhelming amount of good that he's done as a coach. But I don't praise anybody just for who they are or what their name is. That doesn't happen. So you have a 4-point swing coming up on Sunday against the Sabres. I'd rather have Nikishin available for that game if he did need a night off. Because one, it's a matinee game, and we already know the lore when it comes to the Hurricanes playing anytime before 7 o'clock, especially on a damn Sunday. There's that. That's a 4-point swing in the Eastern Conference, even though different division. Still more important than the game that was played last night. And the team last night did fine. So it's just one of those things where, sound the siren. It trying to balance. Oh, but hold up 1 second. Let me get this comment up here. Trying to stay balanced on this subject is like walking a tightrope with 2 broken big toes, shoes that don't fit, and people shooting at me from both directions. This is by far the most annoying part of doing any sort of Hurricanes content stuff. This is the worst part of it, by far. This and the KK thing. But saying Nikishin should never be scratched, like, load management's a good thing. And then, it's like, this game is hard. It takes its toll on people. So if this helps him have a little bit more in the tank come the playoffs, and the Hurricanes do play a style that is very, very arduous, it works, but we can't pretend that it doesn't maybe set in a little bit of fatigue factor sooner. I am very, very happy that they actually I'm very happy if this continues to be a trend where they just kind of, as they can, especially against Western Conference teams or against low-level Atlantic Division teams or something like that. Never if it's a divisional matchup, I hope. But where they just say, okay, let's rotate somebody out. We've got enough depth, and that's more in the tank for them later. I'm totally fine with that. I think it's overdue that they're doing that. So, last night, just not a big deal. It's not a big deal. If it becomes a continuing trend, then it's a problem. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I am very confident that Alexander Nikishin will be in the lineup against Buffalo. Maybe he just needed a night off. And, it's like, I'm not going to get too much into this at all, but you ever have just a really bad mental health day and you call out from work? For all we know, it could have been something like that. Don't know. Not my place to say that I know, because I don't. This is just pure speculation on my part. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to get through some of the comments here, and then I got to get ready to go to work. Lackey says, W early stream. Thank you for joining me, my friend. Crazy to me that Stahl is the third in goals scored for the team 21 games in. Yeah, that was not on my bingo card. Lackey says, pretty stupid to call for his job once benching in November. Riley over Nikishin, dumb, sure, but overreacting that hard over scratching in November is silly. Yeah, and like I said, I more than anything, I think this is a load management thing. People always talk about, the Hurricanes have no gas left when they get to the playoffs. Okay, what's one way that you make that happen? Rotate guys in and out of the lineup. When and where you can. Against a Western Conference team on a road trip where you've already secured 3 of a possible 6 points up to that point before you go to Buffalo, that's great. And then the Sabres are really damn good right now, so I'd rather, if I had to have Nikishin in the lineup against Winnipeg or against Buffalo, I'd rather have him in the lineup against Buffalo. Like I said, I'm not defending the decision. I'm just laying out why I think it happened. And ultimately, it'll probably pay dividends later. If Rod's looking at the big picture, and another thing that Rod has done this year that I'm really happy about, he's not mixing the lines up so often. He's actually letting them work through things. Like the Minnesota game, a season ago, the lines would have been totally thrown in the blender after the first period. However, he let them work through it, and I'm happy about that. Let them, okay, they're going to have issues. Let them work through it. He did. The Minnesota game became interesting, and then they played really well against a good team last night. I'm good with it. Especially without context why he may be out. Yeah, I just... Sound the Siren reposted. Thank you. I just don't think that this is that big of a deal. I really don't. I think part of it's because of the thing that happened in the playoffs last year, and he was wrong then, 110% wrong. And all the NPCs on Rod Brendamore's behalf changed the chip in their brain to say language barrier out of nowhere because they can't think for themselves. Me, on the other hand, I'll tell you, this is not the same situation as the playoffs was. Completely different. Just looking now, 13 of the last 23 are on the road, 4 back-to-backs and 3 spans of 3 and 4. That'll be rough for sure. Yeah, the schedule this year sucks for Carolina. Anytime that they can maybe do something like this, they should. And, people talk about, well, Jarvis wasn't scratched in his rookie season. Blake wasn't scratched in his rookie season, all this other stuff. The team was not that deep last season to where you could do that. Jarvis's rookie season was the same thing. The team was good, but it wasn't anything like the one you have now. The 2 best teams that the Hurricanes have had in the Rod Brindamore era, if you ask me, and this is from third to first, the 2019-2020 team, we never got to see that, what it would have done had the season actually played out like normal because of the virus that totally didn't come from a lab in China. In the event that had occurred that way, I think that you're talking about that team at least going to the conference finals, because I think that team, we never got a chance to see how good it really, really was. And then the playoffs were played under irregular circumstances, as we know. The 2021 team was pretty good. It got a little bit further than I expected it to, because there were times where I thought that Nashville was actually going to steal that series in the modified bubble. 21-22 team. Good. Great. I think that was like kind of the beginning of them entering the really good part of the Rod era. The 22-23 team, that team should have won the cup. But injuries plus Bobrovsky playing out of his mind, that just ended that. 23-24, I couldn't get excited about that team. On paper, though, the 23-24 team should have won the cup. The 22-23 team, I think, is the one that had the best chance. This team right here, especially if you're accounting for who you can call up if you do have injuries, this team right here is the best one Rod has had yet. So if he's being careful with load management with them to make sure that they're ready for the games that really matter, I'm totally good with that. I'm fine with it. That's a good thing. Sound the Siren also says on the same page, it's a good time to give Nikishin a break and breathe. They believe in the guy. I might, yeah. I'm good with them doing this. I really am. It's too much excitement for one game. Are you trying? Yeah, I read that one already. Yeah, staying balanced about this is. Staying balanced about this is difficult. And, Lecky or Lakili, I see this. I can't agree with that. I just can't. I mean, two things can be true at once. If it was anybody other than Rod Brind'Amour if it was anybody behind the bench other than Rod Brind'Amour that has had the results he's had in any other NHL franchise, just because of the conventional way of doing things with the whole coaching carousel, hired to be fired dynamic, he would have been gone already. But one, this organization operates differently, and that's a good thing if you ask me, the unconventional way of it doing things when compared to other NHL franchises. And two, Rod is who he is. So as far as him being given more runway to get the job done, I'm fine with that. I'm just not okay with people acting like he's never that he's never made a mistake at all as a coach, because you're diminishing what he's done well when you've done that. So yeah, I can't agree with that. If I ever get to the point where I think it's time for Rod to go, I'm going to probably set the internet on fire when I say it, because me saying something that praised him and at the same time said, hey, this isn't going to last forever, there were people in the media saying I wanted him fired. There's one in particular who wouldn't say my name, but you probably know who I'm talking about, that wrote me up saying that I wanted him fired. Never said that. Not once. Yet I had my mentions flooded with people. Why do you want Rod fired? I'm like, I never said that. One of them was a real estate agent. So I highly recommend, if you guys are in the market to buy something, don't go to him. Otherwise, you'll end up with a 26% interest rate and your roof will be falling in 3 days after you move in. And I have no reservation saying something like that about someone who put words in my mouth. I really don't. But it's not that big of a deal. Everything's going to be fine. Team is still good. Don't be surprised if there's more of these types of things as the season goes on. Now, I could be totally wrong. This could lead to end of the world. Nikishin doesn't want to play here anymore. He demands to get traded, or he doesn't want to sign, which would be a very awkward situation considering he's not even an RFA. He's an exclusive rights agent, which is different. I understand why people are a little bit nervous considering what happened in the playoffs last year, because the decision in the playoffs was wrong. But this is not the playoffs. It's not one of those things. Everything's okay. Everyone take a deep breath. This is actually legitimately a worse freak out than the 2024 first day of free agency. By 12:30, Kane's ex was melting the fuck down. And I remember posting something right at 12:30. I'm like, it's 12:30 on July 1st. Everybody calm down. And ultimately, everything worked out fine. I was like, this is still going to be a good team. It might not be as good as the previous one, but it's compared to the team that they're about to have, even better. So let's see. Lackey says, if anything, snag Perry. They won't win the cup, but at least they get to the final. I just think Tulski is cream of managers, but coaching is just good and not enough for the cup. I wouldn't say that yet. The reason why I say that, like I said, the 22-23 team should have won the cup. That's the one that could have done it. Svechnikov, Kasha, Pacioretty all got injured, and then you get outplayed by a goalie who kept his team in it so much they could win 4 games straight by 1 goal. One of them in, 5 overtimes? That's not on Rod. He even, when he went in after game 3, he was, doing the post-game presser, and he said, I don't know what else we can do. And he was right. Like, you can't tell the team that they're playing like shit because they weren't. They were playing well. They just, I hate the term getting goalied. And I think that it's used as an excuse for Rod too much. But when you're talking about that series against the Panthers in 22-23, that's exactly what happened. Bobrovsky played out of his mind. He was like, every single game, he was like 2-3 goals saved above expected, roughly, if I go back and look at it. 23-24, wheels came off on that one. Okay, maybe you can kind of blame him for that one a little bit because the team was fully healthy and the only guy you lost was Pesci. And you had a serviceable NHL defenseman ready to step in there and replace him, even though a lot of people get pissed at me for saying that. I don't care. I like Tony. 24-25 team was supposed to be the downfall of the franchise, and they go to the conference finals and they win a game. And when you look at all the adversity the team has faced lately with the injuries and everything like that, this is where Rod's ability as a coach to motivate them and, hold them together through times like this, rough stretches that like that. I don't even want to call it a rough stretch because they've been winning. You don't really get better than that. Are there some things with the system that I think are maybe a little bit archaic? Sure. Do I understand some of his roster and game management decisions? Absolutely not. The one last night, it's a mystery to me. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I'm just pointing out reasons why it might have happened, and I think that people are overreacting. So, and like I said, when it comes to Rod, you will not get a more nuanced opinion than me. There's a few people out there who do the same thing I do where they try and call it like they see it. Balls and strikes, call every pitch, on an individual level. There's a lot of people who can't do that. Brandon Moore steps up to the plate, and you have everybody else either calls just balls and walks him or calls 3 strikes in a row, even though the strike zone's here, the ball's up here, over here, and all the way down here, and catcher's pulling it out of the dirt. It's just the way it is. And not to mention, even if you did want to move on from Rod, there's nobody out there really that could replace him. That was another thing that somebody took out of context that I said one time. When he was getting his contract negotiation done after the 23-24 season, me and my friend Sam Driscoll were on a stream, and we were talking about, theoretically, if Rod didn't stay, who do you maybe look at to replace him? In theory. It was strictly theoretical. And someone wrote that I said that I wanted Jay Woodcroft to replace Rod Brind'Amour, and that's not what I said. I said I would be interested to see what a coach like Jay Woodcroft would do with a more balanced team than what he had in Edmonton, because that team was ultra, ultra top heavy, because it's basically the Draisaitl and McDavid show and everything else is secondary. It's not nearly as balanced, depth-based type of lineup like Carolina has. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm going to get ready to go to work. Everybody calm down. We're okay. Everything's fine. I will try to do an actual legitimate damage report later, but I got an essay I got to finish up. And like I said, I've hardly got to touch NASCAR 25. I bought it 2 days after it came out, and I barely touched it. But everybody, I hope you enjoy your weekend. I should be able to do both shows tomorrow, I'm hoping, as long as I get my stuff done today. Have fun. Take care. Relax. It's okay. It's just a game until the playoffs, and it becomes a matter of life and death.